Hey guys, today we're talking about scales and how they're made. Let's do it. So there are lots of different types of scales out there. I'm only going to talk about 5 today that every musician should know, and they're pretty easy to understand. So I'm going to talk about the major, minor, chromatic, pentatonic, and one called octatonic, which is used by a lot of Russian composers in classical and romantic music. So those are the main 5 we're going to talk about today. We might do another lesson later on about some other scales we might use, but those are the big 5 for today. Alright, so the first really important thing to know about scales is that they're all made up of half steps and whole steps. So if you don't know, a half step is just a distance from one note to the very next note chromatically, which means you don't skip any notes in between. So for example, if we start on C, if we go up or down chromatically by one note at a time without skipping any notes, up would be here, this black key, which is C sharp. Down from C would be here, B natural. And you see there's no black key in between C and B. That's just the way our scales work out. So chromatically goes up a half step or down a half step. A whole step, on the other hand, just like 2 halves equal a whole, 2 half steps equal 1 whole step. So we have from C again, up a whole step, so 2 half steps, 1, 2. So D is a whole step, up from C. If we go the other direction, we have C, and then we go down a half step, so we go down a whole step, so we go down 2 half steps, 1, 2. So B flat is down a whole step. Now every scale we have, every scale we're going to talk about is going to be made up of some combination of whole steps and half steps. Some of them are bigger or smaller combinations, but I'll try to write them out as I go so you can kind of see what the steps are. So the first kind of scale we're going to talk about is a major scale. I'm going to start on C because it's nice and easy to understand. C major is no accidental, so there's white keys, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C, straight up the scale. Between each one of these, like I said earlier, is either a whole step or a half step. And the pattern for any major scale is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So you can take any starting note and use the same pattern and get the actual scale for that note. Actually 3 different kinds of minor scales. We're just going to talk about the natural minor because it uses the same starting note as the same major key. So we would use the same starting note. Like I said, we would go C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and then C. So the pattern would be whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole, and this uses the same key signature as E flat. So any minor key uses the same key signature as 3 half steps up. Show you how to make a pentatonic scale, I'm going to start with the major scale again. So I'm going to redraw the staff, redraw the 8 notes of a major scale from C all the way up to the next C. And then I'm just going to erase a couple of them. So here's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, like normal. And for the pentatonic scale, I'm going to take out the 4th note and the 7th note. So in this case, it would be F and B natural. I'm going to take those out. And I'm just going to leave C, D, E, G, A, and C. And the word pent, the prefix pent, means 5, as in pentagram has 5 sides. You'll notice there's no 4th again and no 7th note of the scale. On a keyboard, you can kind of see the black keys are grouped in groups of 2 and groups of 3, so you can actually see a pentatonic scale there. But with the scale that we're using, starting on C, I'm marking the keys here for you. So you can see C, D, E, and then skip 1, and then 2, G, A, skip 1, and then C. So it's kind of the same, 3 and then 2, as the black keys. So when I move this keyboard back, you can see again 3, 2, the C would start over again with 3. The chromatic scale is probably the easiest to understand because you literally just hit all the notes in between one letter name and the next. So in this case, from C to C, we're going to hit every single note on the keyboard. And the idea is that each one of these is a half step, and you can spell these different ways. So a C sharp is the same thing as a D flat, but for now, I'm going to make them all sharps to make them understandable. But you just play every single note between one letter name and the next same letter name an octave up or an octave down. You'll notice also E and F and B and C have no notes in between. The last one we're going to talk about is octatonic, and this one's a little bit more tricky to understand. It's not used as often in Western music, but it's used a lot in Russian music. It's basically you start on a note and then you alternate whole steps and half steps. You can start on either one, whole step or half step. It's still considered an octatonic scale. On this particular one, I started on a whole note, a whole step. So I have C, D, E flat, F, F sharp, G sharp, which is a whole step, A, B, C. And you can see the whole steps and half steps here as they're laid out. They should just alternate back and forth. Alright, so now that we've got an idea what scales do on their own, let's take a look at them in context. So what I've done is I've written out a chorale, just made up a chorale based off of a C scale, just like we've been working with before. It's a C major scale, so it starts on C, goes up the scale to the top C, the next octave up, and then goes right back down. So the bass line I'm going to show you first by itself, and I've also marked the notes in red, so you'll be able to see them in context of the entire piece, a little bit easier. But let's take a look at the regular C scale that's going to be the base of our chorale. Alright, for the rest of the chorale, I took that same C scale, I didn't change anything about it, and I added notes and chords that would work to progress the scale along a little bit from each note. So I used some conventional part writing techniques that we haven't talked about yet in one of these videos, but I might later on in a different video. But the idea is the chorale is supposed to be cohesive, everything's supposed to be nice and flow together a little bit. It's something you warm up to, something you can tune to a little bit. So the parts aren't going to jump around very much. But the bass line, if you notice at the bottom of the page, at the bottom of the full chorale score, the bass line stays the same. It just goes up the scale and right back down. So this is something that a lot of Baroque composers do. Bach does this a lot. Vivaldi, those guys handle. They use a lot of scalar type movement, which stays inside of one scale. So this is a C major scale on the bottom with a chorale built on top of it. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to change it up a little bit. So we're going to use a different kind of scale. We're going to go from major to minor. And the only thing we're doing to do that is basically changing the key. Alright, so if you remember from earlier in this video, the C minor scale is the same key as E flat major. So 3 flats. E flat, A flat, and B flat are the 3. So all I did to change it from major to minor was I put a new key at the beginning, and then on Sibelius, which is the program that I use to compose music on when I use actual notes instead of MIDI, you can transpose a little bit, but the easier thing for me to do was change the key at the beginning and then click on each note that needed to be changed because it automatically put it back into a natural because I thought I was trying to keep the same notes, and just hit the up and down button real quick, down and then back up on the keyboard, on my computer keyboard, and it puts it into the flat, into the minor version. So I'm going to show you that just so you can see exactly what I did. None of the actual pitch, like note names, have changed. So E's are still E's, A's are still A's. they're just A flats and E flats now instead of the natural version. So I didn't change them like C's or F's or anything like that. And I'm also going to let you hear that process a little bit. It'll be fast forwarded, but you can hear the process because it kind of sounds like old Nintendo sounds or old like Game Boy sounds. So let me show you that process real quick. I changed the key first at the beginning of the piece, and then went through and each of the notes that were that were still in the natural key, I changed into the flat version. All right, let's hear the flat version, or the minor version, I should say, of the C scale. So it'd be C minor scale, and the same key as E flat. Hopefully you can hear the difference in that. It should sound a lot darker, a lot, some people say sadder. Now, for this last part, I took the same exact chorale again, and I didn't change anything else besides just making it into C minor, and I kept everything else the same. So let's listen to the chorale, the minor version of the chorale, and see if you can hear anything that's changed or if it changed the tone or the sound of it at all. So hopefully you heard a big difference there. I love playing with keys and stuff when I write music. I play with keys and play with tonalities, major and minor, and all these different things. And this was only changing it from major to minor. Think about the difference if we changed it from major to pentatonic or minor to octatonic. It would have made a huge difference with the sound of the keys, the sound of the scale. So in your own composing, your own music, this is stuff you can play with, stuff you can try, see if you like it, see if it makes a difference for you. It might, just changing a chord here or there might make a really big difference in your song. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about these scales. If you have any questions, as always, just put them in the comments or let me know, and I'll be glad to help you out any way I can. Thanks. See ya.